Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next in the series of the Rising Star Leadership Conversations webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm delighted to see that we have 110 participants already. So thank you for supporting our Leadership Conversations series. As many of you know, Rising Star is our program that recognises the most talented young professionals across South Africa and gives them a platform to connect and to rise. It's also fabulous to see so many grad stars in the room, so welcome. Thank you. One of our features of Leadership Conversations is the give back offer from top employers. It's inspiring and amazing to see these huge corporations, busy people, donating their time to give back to the next generation. And for that, I would like to kindly thank Momentum for offering a mentorship session to someone who stands out in the audience today. Many of you have been here before, you know this is the offer, but keep that chat engaged. I mean, just the access to senior leadership at Momentum. Bring your A game, make sure you're the one to be noticed. We will go through all the questions after the event and we'll inform the winner early next week. So watch out on social media for this announcement. The slide is here, and across Facebook, we use the Rising Star SA, hashtag Rising Star 2021. All the other handles you need are up here. We also welcome comments from this webinar to be posted. And if you're a grad star and you go into post in the grad star app, believe me, I'm going to see you. I saw those of you who did yesterday. Another of my favorite features of the Leadership Conversations is the opportunity it gives us to feature some of our incredible rising stars. I mean, who better to facilitate such a meaningful session all about celebrating the next generation of talent than one of our very own rising stars? So on this note, I would like to thank Giovanni Abrahams, the rising talent in the logistics field, and indeed the winner of the 2020 Rising Star Award in the transport and logistics sector. Giovanni, thank you for your time and for your support. Going on to leadership. I mean, leadership is challenging at all times, but now in the past 12, 18 months in the time of COVID, wow, this is when true lessons are learned, real icons are born. This isn't a path that's been trodden before. There's no blueprint. This is true leadership. So on this note, I'm honoured today to welcome Jeanette Marais, a distinguished leader, Deputy CEO of Momentum Metropolitan and CEO of Momentum Investments, to give her perspective on leadership and learnings, not just over the past 12 months, but over her entire journey. Jeanette has a strong track record of building profitable businesses at various financial institutions, and she regularly appears in the media. She's an advocate for lifelong learning, and she holds various degrees, including an MBA with honours from IMD Switzerland. Making a difference in the lives of clients, colleagues, and especially empowering women is her aim. She really is an incredible lady, and she is here today to help you. So do not miss out on this amazing insight from this amazing lady. Ask, ask, ask. Giovanni and Jeanette, I'm done. I'm going to leave it here. Nobody wants to hear any more from me. Welcome.
Good morning, Laura, and thank you to Black Park Productions for the opportunity to co-facilitate this webinar this morning. Excuse me. Good morning to our audience who has joined us online, and thank you for the time you have taken to listen to this insightful leadership discussion today. And last but not least, good morning to Jeanette, our guest of honor.
Hello, Giovanni. Thank you, Laura, everybody. I must say, when Laura was talking about if you guys ask questions, you can win an hour of mentorship. It does feel a little like those auctions you always have where, you can kind of, the best looking guy is on auction and you can have a dinner date with them. So I know, Giovanni, that the stakes are high. If no one asks questions and no one wins an hour with me, I'm going to feel very, very bad. So help me to put up my best game this morning.
I will indeed do so, Jeanette. So I'm indeed humbled and honored to chat to you this morning in the hope that we could unpack some of your learnings throughout your career, which will in turn empower us as future leaders who are all online this morning to achieve similar successes in our career. So before we kick off this hour of discussion, for the audience to understand a little bit more about you as a person, can you give us a brief synopsis of yourself, Jeanette?
Thanks, Giovanni. Well, if I start right at the beginning, I grew up on a farm in the Free State. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And I went to a very small little school on one of these little plattelandse dorpies there. And then I studied at the University of the Free State. I did my degree and my honours degree there. And then I actually started my career at Momentum, and this year exactly 30 years ago. So I'm very aware that this means I've worked for longer than any of you have been alive. And I spent my first 10 years of my career there. Then I was headhunted by PSG to help them start the investment business and what is also today known as PSG Consult and PSG Wealth. After that followed probably my most fun job. I was part of a small team who built South Africa's first online bank, 2020. Then followed 5 years at Old Mutual as Executive General Manager in charge of distribution. So I think you can see the pattern for me has always been financial services and then mostly distribution and, investments. And then just before Momentum, I joined Allan Gray, where I spent 10 years. And there I was responsible for the retail business, the investment business, investment platform and unit trusts. And then in 2017, Momentum's board approached me and convinced me to return to the group in my current role and also to be part of a major turnaround of our group. So actually, my career, although I've taken a few turns, have actually brought me full circle back to where I started.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. So there can be no doubt that throughout this illustrious career you've mentioned to us and achieving your current position, that you might have encountered many different leaders throughout your career. Can you share with us some of the leaders that you've experienced and how have they helped in shaping your personal leadership style today?
Yeah, thank you. It's actually a great question. I'll start by saying that just on a personal level, I'm a very keen observer of people and their behavior. So I can say that I probably, everything I know today was influenced in some way by others and by me, observing just how others were leading, what others were doing. In the intro, Laura said, I'm a supporter of lifelong learning. And I mean, I can honestly say I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't learn something, whether it's of myself or from people around me. So I think having someone that you admire, that you can learn from, a mentor, is one of the most beneficial opportunities that any upcoming leader can have. And I had that opportunity. And this is just how, life works. Healy Meyer, who's our CEO today, and who actually returned to the group with me 3 years ago, actually was my first boss at Momentum. He appointed me here, and he turned out to be a wonderful mentor. He took a personal interest in me. He supported me through my actuarial studies, helped me with opportunities. He was a fantastic soundboard to me. And actually, I think that has helped a lot to kind of just put me on the path. I've also just, in preparation for this, research shows that people with mentors experience greater job satisfaction, far better organizational commitment, career success, and fulfillment. So I think, if any of you can have and find a mentor, and sometimes they're in your organization, but they don't need to be, that I think helps a lot. So for me, leaders who shaped me are mostly the ones that I saw in action. And also, I don't know how many women we have here today on the call, but I can also say that all of those leaders were men. I have never, in any of the organizations where I worked, I've never had a woman more senior than me. So I've actually never had what I would say the privilege of learning from a woman. So these were all men, and I'm very grateful to all of them. They've invested in my growth and my development. They generously shared wisdom, their knowledge. They gave me a lot of advice and input. Sometimes had to say to me, Jeanette, calm down, slow down. Because I think, the race that I was running was always a kind of a fast-paced one. And then probably the leaders I've learned most from are the ones that have shown me some traits that I thought that's not how I think you should do it. So often you also learn not just from people in a positive way, but you also learn from people in terms of, well, what not to do, and what you don't think is the best way to do it. So I think today I'd love and appreciate the opportunity to be a trailblazer for other women in this industry. I'm passionate about this because I understand the great benefits that I got from learning from men. But I believe that as a woman, I have experienced different challenges in my career, which is one reason why I feel a sense of duty to help other women navigate their careers. And, you know, that's something that I spend time on every single day of my life.
Thank you for that. So in general, I hear one golden thread. So there's two things out of all the comments you've mentioned that I'd like to touch on. So one being, obviously, you've mentioned that you're a trailblazer for women in industry. So allow me to ask a two-pronged approach, a two-pronged question, please. Can you elaborate on that point for us as the first question? And then the second question is, I hear, and it's very comforting to hear that you as a senior leader in our country is saying that learnings, it's a common thread, a golden word that I hear in everything you're saying. Can you share with us the most important lessons that you've also learned throughout your career? Please, thank you very much.
Okay, so starting on the question about being a trailblazer for women. You know, let me start by saying that 30 years ago when I entered this industry, specifically at Momentum, but to be honest, it wasn't different, you know, anywhere else. It was just completely pale male and, you know, people a lot older. And one of the first things that I realized, and it's actually a lesson that I want to leave with every single one of you today. When I got into the organization, I looked up and I saw people that were not like me. They were older, they were male, they were all white. Now, you could do that, whoever you are. You could look up and see just white people. You could look up and you can see just men. You can even come into an organization and see just women and think, well, you know, people like me won't make it here. Now, that's for me a choice that you can make every single day. I looked up and around and I thought, oh my goodness, what an opportunity, because I'm different. I'm a woman and I'm ambitious and I want to do this, and they're going to need me so much so soon. So it's up to me to make sure that I'm ready. It's up to me to make sure that the day these guys are ready to appoint their first woman as a leader or a manager, I'm going to be ready. And if I fail that, I fail myself, because actually it's up to me. And that have changed something in me so much, because it meant from that day onwards, I was working harder if that's what I needed to do. I was working longer hours if that's what I needed to do. I worked weekends. If a job came along, I put my hand up and I said, give me a chance. So I think, you know, I know I'm kind of more talking about me and not answering your question yet about being a trailblazer. But I think the point is that this is my first lesson I want to, or leave, you know, a piece of wisdom I want to leave with everybody. If you walk into an organization and you're different, that's a benefit. That's an opportunity that is just waiting to happen. Make sure you're ready for it. So that's the one part of it. But, you know, in terms of being a trailblazer, I mean, in my entire career, like I've mentioned, I was always the only woman. I was always the only, you know, never had a woman more senior than me, never had one that I could learn from. Now, if you just think about it, women currently, and by the way, I'm not this like feminist person that hate men. I love men. I think it was wonderful that I could be the only woman in the boardroom and, you know, spend it with men. So that's not that at all. But there's an inequality in that worries me a lot. If you think about it, women currently make up more than half of the workforce in South Africa. In fact, 51% is women. But that does not typically reflect at boardroom tables. It doesn't reflect on pay slips. It doesn't even reflect in the financial decisions that couples make in their homes every day. Financial decision making at home is still very much the male party to this partnership and relationships. So all of that are things that I feel so passionate about. So, I mean, I think although the representation is improving, we really still have a long way to go. And I think that people like me in senior positions are there to, you know, leave the world a better place for women, to open up doors. And there's something about it. Trailblazing also means that when you leave a gap for others to go and say, wow, we should have more of her. You know, we should have more women, because actually some of the unconscious biases I had that thought that women wasn't maybe competent or wasn't willing to work as hard as men or anything have all been bashed by this person that we now have. So, you know, I think something else around that is just last year in August, there was a digital platform that did some research, and it showed that women on average still earn 25% less than their male counterparts. Now, put yourself in that position. I mean, it's not a great one to be in. The thing is, it's not always transparent, so women don't always know it. But again, it takes someone senior like me to be in the boardroom asking those questions. On an annual basis, we do a Momentum UNISA financial services or wellness survey. And that has also consistently found that women take the back seat in long-term financial planning. And women often feel helpless or less empowered, particularly when it comes to household money matters. So, if you Google me or if you followed me on Geldhelder or Money Heroes over the last while on TV, you will hear that coming through all the way, encouraging women to take charge, encouraging women to be informed, encouraging women to be part and to actually put up their hands, in terms of just being in that boardroom, having a voice, being heard. And then maybe lastly, there's an interesting study that talks about the power of three. And it says that while you're the only person, it's not a tribe. The moment there's three of you, whoever you are, whether it is, let me use women as an example, then suddenly you start to, the powers start to build up, because that power of three means there are three people who echo the same voice, have the same view that they think about things. So I'm happy to say that there's, out of 11 on our group Exco, there's 3 of us women, and there's a bit of a tribe there. I think we become a force to be reckoned with. On our board, there's I think, I can't even remember the number. I think there's like 11 women on our board, and I think all of that have actually helped to kind of come together as being a trailblazer. So your second question, I'm a bit older. Giovanni, remind me.
So I asked about the trailblazers, and then I asked what has been the lessons that you've learned, because you mentioned in your previous question that you've learned a lot from previous leaders in your roles.
Yeah, so, I think those lessons are, I think you take a little piece of what you see and what you learn from people every day. And it kind of, in a way, comes together to form you. But I think some of the things that I've learned, one of them is that the leaders that I admired most through my career were authentic to who they really are. They were people who were unashamedly showing the magic that they bring to the table. And I think, if I think about myself as a leader, it took a lot for me to trust my gut. It took a lot for me to stand up and trust that magic that I bring to the table. I mean, let's face it, often your greatest strength can become your greatest weakness. In my case, I am a strong woman. I have a voice. I'm feisty. Sometimes that scares people, and you got to actually manage that. Now you can manage it in a way where you start to diminish that power and that strength and that magic. But then it's not authentic anymore. Then you become somebody that is not truly you. And then what are you? Because there's nothing more real than just being who you are and pulling that together. I mean, I've learned so much, but I think the most important one is trust who you are and bring that magic with all of its good and bad to the table. And then observe and I'm hard on myself, reflect on the things that you do wrong. I do that every day. I drive home now that I live at work, basically, every night before I go to sleep, I think, what did I do well today? But I'm the kind of person that focuses more on what did I not do well today. Learn from that. Learn from the impact you have on people. Be aware of the impact you have on people. Be hard on yourself on what went well and what didn't. And not because you then want to go into a big kind of self-flagellation or depression, but rather to say, how can I do that better next time? How can I make sure that doesn't happen again? So it actually sounds like quite a simple recipe, but it's one that has worked for me throughout my career, and it's one that I passionately believe in.
Thank you very much for that, Jeanette. So just reflecting on some of the things you've said, and there was a quote that came to mind to me that says, "Stand on the shoulders of giants and you shall see your future," right? And you've mentioned also that from what I can hear you saying is that you were at a space in your career where you were sitting down and you were looking up at the structure and you thought to yourself, what do I see? How do I go? How do I progress from here? So my question then essentially is, who or what inspires you and gives you the sense of mental toughness? Because there's also a little bit of a thread that I hear there, that to be able to navigate the corporate spheres in life, that one needs to have some sense of mental toughness to overcome. So then essentially my question is, who or what inspires you to bring that mental toughness? Who or what has inspired you? On whose shoulders were you able to stand to see this future of you becoming a CEO?
Oh, thank you. That's a beautiful question. In fact, now that you quoted standing on the shoulders of giants, I wanted to just it's a Jack Welch quote, and I want to share that before I kind of answer your question. And that one says, before you're a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And I think that is actually what inspires me. That is actually, this passion that you talk about, this kind of mental strength that you talk about is actually exactly that, is to be able to make a difference. I mean, my entire inspiration on a daily basis is making a difference in the lives of others, whether it is in my personal life, my family, whether it is, in a workspace. But I'm quite happy to share with you a little personal anecdote. I mean, you asked me who inspired me most to wanted to become a CEO. So I'll be honest, I can't say that I started my career with this aspiration. I had the aspiration to always grow. And often I looked up and I saw a kind of a boss and I thought, oh, I think I can do that job and I can do it better. And, sometimes I got the opportunity to put my hand up, and most of the time I was, successful enough to get that. But where does it all come from? I distinctly remember when I was growing up, and I was a little girl, 4 or 5 years old, I was lying in bed at night and I could hear my parents argue about money. Now, let me just give you a bit of background. My mum was actually in the late 50s, early 60s. She was one of, I suppose, a very small handful of women that had the opportunity to go to university, and she graduated. I mean, she was a teacher, but she graduated from there. She had a career, and then she married this farmer, and she gave all of it up, all of her independence. She gave it up to raise, to be a wife and to raise 5 children. And what I remember about those arguments, and I mean, we weren't poor. I mean, we were always okay. But what it was about, and it took some time for me to realize what it was about, was what my mum was arguing for was her lack of identity. She was arguing for her independence that she lost, because as it is on a farm, you don't have a monthly income. So for every single thing she needed to do, she needed to ask my dad for money. And that was such a tough thing for her, because it meant that she just, had to always go and ask. I need 100 Rand for shoes for the kids. I need this, I need that. I mean, she always pleaded and said, give me anything that is mine that I can make a decision on. And I will tell you this, so when I was 5, I could read and write because my mum, I think in a way, poured all of her energy into me being a teacher. So I could read and write by 5. And I wrote it down, and years later, she gave me the book. And I said, in Afrikaans, obviously, because I'm Afrikaans, but I wrote, I will never ask a man for money. Where that came from, I think, was just that thing that I heard happening all around me. And today I can honestly say that I've never, ever in my entire life one day asked a man for money. Suppose I ask my boss for a good raise, but even that I'm not very good at. I'm not very good at kind of fighting for myself and asking. I always believe if I work hard enough, it will come my way. But if anything, I do attribute a lot of who I am today to my mum and that incredible influence she had, on me throughout my career. And I can often say that so much of it I've done for her, because it's like always in the back of my mind, Mum, here you go. I've reached another goal, and it is for you. So I think, long answer, but I think often, only years later, we realize that incredible influence that our, most dearest people had on us. So I would say that, on the shoulders of my mum, a feisty woman. I mean, she is the one that said to me when I got married, it's like, don't start with a family too early. Just because, make sure that you realize, your potential. before life takes you into a direction where you kind of lose that autonomy to make those decisions about where you go and who you are.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. So in my mind, I heard you earlier discussing around the fact that you being a CEO, you obviously manage a board, and there's many various different kinds of leadership styles that sits around the table that brings its own sort of flavor, its own blend. Can you talk to us about the benefits of different leadership styles brought to the table and how you've experienced working with that over your time as leading a board?
Yeah, in fact, you know what I'll do is I think I'll relate it back to just actually the experience that I've built up through the years. I'll take you through. I did right at the beginning. I kind of told you I've worked for different companies and who they were and so forth. But actually, when I was doing this executive MBA, I mean, most amazing opportunity I ever had. The previous company I worked for was happy to pay for me to go and do this executive MBA in Switzerland. In fact, I did it part-time. I did it while I was working, so it wasn't always kind of that easy and plain sailing. But anyway, one of my best and most favorite subjects was actually management development. Out of everything I learned, the development of myself as a leader and I think the theory behind who I was and what I was doing, understand that actually, played a massive role for me. So in management development, they actually shared with us the definitions of different types of leadership styles that is necessary and needed related to the different life cycles of companies. And it was then that I looked at it and thought, oh my goodness, how lucky am I? And let me explain why I say this. I mentioned 2020, the South Africa's first online bank that we started. Now, when you're part of a startup, there's very different requirements from you as a leader. You need to be innovative. I mean, I think a lot of you probably are. You understand that so fully. You have to think out the box. You need to be creative. You need to be able to start with a blank piece of paper because actually, there's nothing there. You got to build it all. You got to recruit the best people. As a startup, you're not in a position to have rich resources at your fingertips. So you actually have to do a lot yourself. You need to be hands-on. In fact, at 2020, I had a double whammy leadership experience because also the bank that was funding us went into curatorship, Old Sambo. Some of you might not even know about it. It's before your time. But that meant that we also had to close down our little baby, our company that we built, that we love dearly. And it had nothing to do with our success or failure, but we had to close it down. So that pulls on completely different leadership capabilities to build a business, but also to close one down. After that, I was headhunted to actually lead the merger of two financial services businesses. Very different leadership needs there. You need to unite two cultures. You need to give people hope. Everybody is just sitting saying, will I have a job? Won't I have a job? You have to bring two businesses with very divergent views and strategies together and unite them around a new goal and a new culture and a new identity. Very different, again, leadership styles needed. I then work that was probably my toughest job because you can hear I'm a bit of a starter and a fixer. I worked at Allan Gray, who is at the top of their game. I walked into this organization that looked at me and said, we like your energy, but can you just hold back a little? We don't want to change. We think we do things well and greatly. And it's absolutely true. But the point is, how do you convince a company at the top of its game that you can always do better, even if it's just incrementally, that you should challenge yourself on a daily basis to, do things better and do things differently. And that, of course, I think in a way have prepared me for my current role, which was a massive turnaround of a listed business, which means that every single thing we do every day, is watched by the world, is reported on. It's very visible. And you've got to actually not just convince your own organization and give people hope that there is a future and unite them around a new goal. You also have to convince the investment world out there that they should believe that what you're doing is the right thing so that they can keep on investing in your business. So I think those are some of just the different leadership styles. And I think sometimes when you work at the same organization all your life, you might get one or two of these experiences. But by changing careers often, I have just walked into all of these different experiences and were almost forced to kind of develop those muscles, even sometimes when I didn't have them. And that today, I think, adds to everything I know about business and leadership.
Thank you very much for that. So I just absolutely have to throw a spanner in the works. You said something that absolutely just attracted my attention there around the different leadership styles related to the cycles in which business is. And the audience all being grad stars, some a little bit more obviously mature in their careers, wanting to understand just a little bit of a spanner in the work. So can you share with us your experience or how you perceive one could go about positioning your brand as one of those that you've mentioned, a bit of a turnaround strategist, etc., in industry?
The thing is that you got to be given an opportunity. So if I think back, I didn't come into Momentum thinking, okay, I'll be a great fixer of businesses or I'll be a great starter of businesses. I was given opportunities where I learned things that then became part of my repertoire and I would say my reputation, you know. And let me give you an example. In Momentum, that was my first startup opportunity. And this was in the late 90s, is when, I mean, those of you that is interested in kind of finances and investing, there were only at that point in time 40 unit trust funds in South Africa. 40, okay, out of a universe today that's like close to 2,000 funds. Industry in its infancy. And we developed this idea that instead of everybody kind of investing their money with these old big life insurance companies, there should be choice, and that unit trust was a far better way, and that we should get the public interested in actually putting their money there. Now, how do you do that? The idea we then developed was what today is well known as an investment platform. So you're an administrator and you offer all these unit trust funds and different products, and people actually put their money in one place and then pick all these funds and you do the administration of it. So that was, and then we presented this to the Momentum top leadership team, and they said, oh my goodness, I think you're mad. That will never fly. But okay, 5 of you, here's some money, there's 5 computers, there's a room, go start this thing. We don't think it will work, but actually just go start it. Now, 2 things happened. Firstly was that belief that I had, because it was kind of my idea that I helped develop. Secondly, it was just that will to say, we will not fail. And the great thing when you can start a business with a big brother behind you is that financially you'll be okay, but you still need to kind of prove yourself. And that gave me the opportunity to be part of a startup. But here's the thing. You asked me, how can you put up your hand when these opportunities come along? I could have said, I'm only in my early 20s. What do I know? That's not what I did. I said, give me that opportunity. Please, please, will you? And they did. They took a chance on me. And I didn't fail, I suppose, them or myself. And that's the thing, that you got to put up your hand. You got to trust your gut. You got to trust yourself. If you don't, I mean, it's easy to have 16,000 people in an organization and overlook all of them, because nobody's brave enough to stick up their hand and say, I'm willing to kind of expose myself. I'm willing to, do something here. When it is a fixing of a business, in organizations, sometimes there's just a department that's not doing well, or one of your business units that's not doing well. Stick up your hand and say, look, I think I've got the kind of strength of personality to be able to make tough decisions under difficult circumstances. Can I have that opportunity? If you don't put up your hand, you won't be given those opportunities.
Thank you, Jeanette. So I draw from a reference of yours to an earlier question. Can you elaborate on how you believe that authenticity has played a part in your leadership?
Yeah, so I think authenticity is just that. In fact, there's a beautiful quote. I gotta just go through my notes and find it. It's by Dr. Seuss. By the way, I mean, there's lots of wonderful wisdom that you can learn from Dr. Seuss. Let me just find it. I don't want to stuff it up. I want to read it properly. I just want to go find my notes. So he says, today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Isn't that beautiful? Today you're you, that's truer than true. There's no one alive who is youer than you. That is authenticity. You know, authenticity is just being yourself. Now, being yourself doesn't mean yourself who's not willing to grow, or yourself that's not willing to learn, or yourself that think, okay, ta-da, here I am, I'm perfect. That's not what it means. But being authentic to yourself. In fact, in one of my jobs, and, you know, let me not mention which one, I was up for 3 years or so to be one of only 3 people earmarked to be the next CEO. And I worked really hard for it. You know, I had my heart set on it. I did all of it. And when it came that they're not going to offer me the job because they felt that I was not enough like them. Now, okay, firstly, that is just a kick in the teeth. You know, you've spent 10 years of your career at this place. You feel you've given your heart and your soul and your everything. You can know, you can show financially how you've helped this business grow and how much money you helped it make. And then when it gets down to a very personal level, people say to you, but you're not like us. You're not enough like us. And they actually went as far as saying, we will give you the job if you could prove to us in the next few months that you can be more like us, if you can prove that you can hold back, if you can prove that you're not just here to change everything. It was probably the toughest 3 months of my entire career because, let me say this, with a lot of energy, I set out in the first month to be like them. And then one night, I sat down and I said, Jeanette, I was so deeply unhappy. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because the magic you bring to the table is the magic that scares these people. And if you give that up, it's all gone. Who are you? Who are you then? What have you got to offer? If you are willing to step away from the one thing that makes you who you are. And that for me is authenticity. And I just think that people gravitate towards people who are always the same. And with that, I don't mean that you're just always nice or what I mean is what you say you'll do is what you do. What you do is completely congruent with your belief system. It shines through. People see it. You can't hide it. And especially in work. I mean, we spend more time at work, especially nowadays, than we even do in our own personal lives. It's that authenticity. I think people just trust you as a leader and as a person and as a colleague when what they see is, in a way, what they get. And that you are that person and that there's that kind of golden thread that goes through. That's also a bit of part of your kind of reputation, you know. I'm always amazed when I walk into a new organization, the kind of view everyone have on me. It's like, whoa, here's Jeanette, and, you know, she's strong and she fires people and she does all of that. In a way, it kind of often worries me. It's like, where does that even come from? On the other hand, it also means that you build up that reputation through years because people know when you get Jeanette, that is the package. That is what you get. And to be honest, you know, today I'm so grateful that I was never offered that CEO position. I think I would have been so desperately unhappy trying every single day to be someone that I'm not. And that for me is authenticity.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. So let's fast forward a few years and deal with our current situation. So as we're all aware, we are amid a pandemic. However, I think I believe that we are all COVIDed out, if that's even a term or a word. So what I would offer as a question next is then all the past leadership experience that you've had, Jeanette, can you explain to us how this has helped you navigate the challenges that we face right now?
Yeah, you know, Giovanni, I mean, to be honest, I don't think anything could have prepared any of us for what we've experienced, right? I mean, I think when COVID happened, it is so unlike anything that any of us have ever experienced, that we just actually had to almost in a way regroup and like stand up and say, right, you know, what am What am I going to do? How am I going to navigate through this? I would say that, what helped me most during COVID, and especially at the beginning, was just the realization that in a crisis, what people need most is strong leadership, someone that they can follow, someone that they could look up to. Actually, everybody can't lead or be in charge. I mean, that will just be chaos. But what I found was people wanted someone fearless to lead the way. I'll be honest, I sometimes had to fake it. I wasn't always that fearless. I often looked and I thought, oh my goodness, I have no idea. I actually have no idea. But kind of, fake it through, and fake it till you make it is one of the things people say, because actually, for me to now crumble, or for me to become this kind of, gibbering person that doesn't know, is not going to help. But what is going to help is having the courage to make a decision right here, right now, with the limited information that I have available. But then have the courage to change tack if more information become available, or if I see or think that we're on the wrong track. And that's often not easy to do because there's a bit of ego involved. Don't we all want to be right all the time? I think one of the greatest things that I've learned is that you are seldom right on the first kind of step you take. But just take that step, test the waters, go in a direction, and then have the courage to change and say to your team, hey guys, more information available, here's what we do. I also had the opportunity to, I think, draw on the wisdom of many people around me that I trust. I never thought that this is for me and me alone and I need to go conquer the world. We had so many conversations and check-ins and check-ups and saying, look, all of us play a role. All of us bring different things to the table. Let's share that wisdom and then let's take it from there. So, one of the first things we needed to do was actually get 16,000 people within 5 days. So we knew this was coming because we, had some conversations with government and so in the week or so before lockdown. We literally had 5 days to take 16 people out of the office into their homes and allow them and set them up so that they could work off online. That was a massive task to do. But then you realize, you can panic or you can just have absolute logic. Sit down, put down the steps, like first thing that should happen, then the second, then the third, which teams do we need to get involved, be all organized, and then set people up to go and do what they need to do. And I think it's just kind of simple things. It's the things that people will now go and write best-selling books on. But it's actually quite simple.
Thanks for that, Jeanette. So there's the saying that I believe in, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? So through these difficult times, can you share with us, what do you think are the attributes that gets the tough going?
Yeah, so, I think the attributes for me is when you realize that there will be some decisions that you must just make, and you can't draw back on others trying to help you or anything. You actually just need to do what needs to be done. But then gather your team around you, because actually leadership is not a journey of isolation. Leadership is about taking a whole lot of people with you and drawing on the strengths of every single person in your team. Because as a team together, in my case, the business I'm responsible for is in total like 16,000. In Momentum Investments, there's 650, and you can break it up. And then in my own team, I have a bigger team of about 20, and then my own like small team, the 3 people that head up or 5 people that head up my businesses are just a smaller team. So if you think about that, then you draw on them as leaders as well, because this one is softer. That one is more connected to people. This one is tougher. I suppose that's always me. But you have all of these different people that bring different things to the table. Bring that together. And that's where I think the attributes come out, is that, yes, someone in the end of the day need to stand up and make a decision. Someone need to go out and communicate what you've decided to do, but draw on that kind of collective wisdom of everybody around you. And I think that is what has taken us through. And then, I want to prompt you in a direction, but that word connected, is a very big one for me. The thing about connectedness.
You sort of just sent me there now. So in your previous question, you've mentioned that you've had to get staff to work from home, quite a large amount of number. And in the last question, you've mentioned taking people on a journey with you. So can you share with us how you believe staying connected with your people makes you a better leader, and how through this pandemic have you stayed connected with staff being at home and you also working from home?
Yeah, so I think by now, you've seen enough of me to know that I'm a people person. I'm not a loner. I'm not the kind of person that like to be or work in isolation. That's just not me. So for me personally, being isolated was quite tough. And then very, very quickly, I realized, okay, well, in that case, then I need to stay connected. And I think connectedness is a little bit of being connected with yourself as well. Keep a journal. When you go through tough times, write down how you feel, write down, because often when you've written it on paper, you can look at it and you can say, oh, okay, now it makes kind of more sense to me because I could distance myself from it a little bit. But the connectedness for me was realizing that if that's how I felt, everybody else was feeling the same way, the same loneliness, the same isolation. So reach out. So again, I'll give you another quote. Leadership is the ability to get extraordinary achievement from ordinary people. And I think that's what I knew. If we could stay connected, we could get extraordinary results from people, even ordinary people in, I suppose, extraordinary circumstances. So I think a good leader has the ability to understand what the team needs in order to achieve those goals. And, let me also say this. I think my goals are always seemingly impossible. I believe that when you set goals, you should stretch people. If a goal is not a goal, if it's something that you kind of, achieve by just kind of pitching up or waking up. So connectedness meant communicating a lot more. I started by having rituals around communication. Friday afternoons was like from 4 o'clock onwards, a drink with, my team, for instance. Right through the week, every single morning, 7 to 8 was a catch up with small groups of our client service people, because you needed to kind of keep them motivated, to kind of keep clients motivated. So I've actually connected with more people in my team over, across the 650 people during COVID than what I ever did being physically at the office. And it's because suddenly, where in the past you would have had to change people's diaries to get 20 people at the same place at the same time. Here, you could have a 7 to 8 coffee session in the morning with 20 people, reach out to all of them at the same time and have personal conversations. So that was the other part about connectedness, is it's not also only about work. Needed to create an opportunity for people to say, I'm checking in, how are you doing today? For instance, I'll give you an example. I don't have my own children, but I have 3 dogs that are just absolutely everything to me. And during COVID in July last year, my favorite one-eyed rescue dog passed away. I needed to be able to reach out to my team to say, I am so heartsore. I need you guys. And you know what that did for our relationship? That I was happy and willing to reach out and say, guys, now I need you. So our conversations was often about, what are you afraid of? What do you worry about most? Often was about giving people that certainty that we were not going to let people go, that financially the group is strong enough that people could worry about a lot of stuff, but they didn't need to worry about job security. Now you would say, okay, but it's a big group, of course, that's logical. Well, it isn't. Lots of people had big fears and worries about salary cuts and things like that, also because they were experiencing it. And I think that for me was the connectedness. It's the human side, because leadership is about human beings. It's about me being an authentic human being that reach out to every single person in their own personal circumstances. And that for me is the power of connectedness.
Thank you. So I think you've in short also described to us some of the benefits there that you've experienced in your organization. So I'd like to tackle another hot topic for us, which is the 4IR, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And obviously being in the financial services sector, it's something that would impact your business. So are you able to share with us how important it is to incorporate technology in future-proofing your business?
Yeah, sure, Giovanni. I mean, today, if you walk into our boardroom, you just hear digital, 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 and technology the whole time. But, I always also worry about it because it could be technology just for the sake of it. And I think that is quite important that you channel it in the right way. So let me give you a two-pronged answer. The one, of course, is just what we are doing today. Simply, we could never do this without technology. In fact, think about it. How would we ever have been able to get all of the rising stars in one room this morning with me there, even before COVID? I suppose you guys did do it, but I mean, now it's just, you can reach so many more people. We had a Global Matters, we call it, conference yesterday, and we had over 3,000 advisors dial in. Now, in the past, that was 2 weeks out of my life. I would have had to get on a plane. Well, I live in Cape Town, but Cape Town, then Joburg, then Pretoria, then Polokwane, then Gqeberha, then Durban, and so forth. Now you do it one day, 4 hours, and you've reached an entire community. So I think that part of technology, I mean, we are now embracing. Before COVID, I was commuting to Johannesburg on a weekly basis. Out Sunday nights, back Friday nights. Out Sunday nights, back Friday nights. Short weekend, back again. Because that's just how work was. Now, today, I'm here in Cape Town. 2 days before, I was in Pretoria for 2 days. Tomorrow, I actually have some meetings, and I'm going to do it from our farm on the West Coast because that's where my husband is. So I suppose that part of technology we are now all embracing, and it's the whole new way of work and all of that. But I think the more important part to the question is in financial services, the importance of it. So I'll put it to you in my words. I think the greatest mistake a financial services organization can make is to break the human connection. And here's why. Think about your own finances. Now, whether you're in a good or a bad financial position is not the point. The moment you start to think about it, your kind of heart beats a little bit faster because you're like, oh, okay, it's fine to talk about others, but when it's your own, you become emotional. We're all emotionally connected to our own finances and our own fears about what the market is going to do, or did I go into the market too early or too late, and so forth. So investment specifically is a very emotional journey. There's very little rational about it. Now, if you then break the human connection by just putting a computer in front of people, I think it will be the greatest mistake that you can make. But people in an organization with low margins and servicing and so forth are actually the most expensive part of your entire kind of service chain. So the challenge that we have is, how do we put our best people in front of our clients, but don't let our most expensive people do non-value add transactional things? So how do we combine that human being with technology so that clients can self-service on the non-value add things, and then make that connection with a human being when they need reassurance about how they've invested their money, or when they need advice on, have I done the right thing, or should I get in or out, or whatever that case might be. So I think for me, it's that combination, but not breaking that human connection, because people are emotional about their finances and money. They're not rational. And computers are just kind of cold and rational. That's also why, I mean, lots of you can read up about robo-advice. 7-8 years ago, if I went to any conference anywhere in the world, all they spoke about was how robo-advice was going to overtake our industry and put all financial advisors out of a job. Well, guess what? It's 8 years later, and financial advisors are stronger than ever, and robo-advice have failed. But I think it's because it's that combination. Even an advisor, let your clients fill out the forms online. That's not what you add value on. In fact, most of them have really bad handwriting. So let your client do that. You spend your time connecting with your client and their needs and putting their plans together.
Thank you, Jeanette. So for the last 15 minutes, let's take a look at the future. Let's put our futuristic hats on. And I've got 3 specific questions that I'd like to deal with regards to this element. So what do you believe the new normal would look like for leaders, whether that is in your industry or otherwise? Just a brief overview and some thoughts you want to share on that?
Yeah, so, let me be honest. Having done this for 30 years, I do want to say we should also be aware to not always just latched onto the new terms. And now new normal is like the thing that everybody says. Actually, yeah, so some things have changed. New normal, I suppose, is now that you'll have these, like, in fact, let me give you an example about how we'll be doing it. We'll probably only be returning about 55% of our people to the office physically on a daily basis. But the other half will work hybrid, so they'll work kind of combinations from home and from the office. And then actually we have people who's going to work from home on a permanent basis. Why? Because they are far more productive, they're far less distractions, they make less mistakes, and they actually get a whole lot more work done. In fact, I'll just digress because I suppose I have the mic. I'll tell you a beautiful story. Throughout COVID, especially in the beginning, obviously we monitor on a minute by minute basis in our client service center who's online, who's doing transactions, how many transactions, we look at the quality of the transactions and so forth. And then there was one of our employees who we noticed was actually going online at 4:15 in the morning. And then she worked until about 7, and then she logged off for an hour or two. And then again, during the kind of late morning, she would work, then again log off, and then late at night again. And we phoned her and said, hey, what is this? She then shared with us, and she said, COVID's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I have a small baby whom I was returning from maternity leave. I would have had to leave my baby with my mum. I wouldn't have been able to be at home. And here's my life. I get up at 4 every morning. I catch my first taxi at 4:30 to actually arrive in Centurion at head office at 8. So from 4:30 to 8, she travels on taxis to get to the office. She works until 5, then she starts to catch all of her taxis again to get home at 8:30 to 9 o'clock that night. From literally 4:30 to 9 or 8:30 at night, that's her day. Suddenly, she says, I still wake up at 4. I don't need to do makeup. I don't even need to get dressed. I can sit in my pajamas. I start working. I'm at my most productive between then and 7. Then my baby wakes up. I spend an hour or two with her. Then, I put her to sleep and I again kind of work. And then I put her to bed at night and then I work again. She said, this changed my life. Now, that for me is a new normal. Also means that the old traditional way of get on a taxi every morning, or for me getting on a plane every Sunday night, or for someone else getting in their car, spending 2 hours in traffic, that has changed. We never ever have to live like that again. Now, what your question is, what does it mean for leaders? Well, I think let's adapt to that. Let's adapt in our own minds to our own beliefs about people are just productive and I can see them. Well, I mean, this is proven that it's not true, that people are productive regardless of whether I can see them, because actually people inherently, do what's expected of them. But inherently, even when you see people, they're always underperformers. There's always people who are not really pulling their weight. That hasn't changed. So that's why I say don't just latch onto new normal. We still work with people. We still work with goals. We still work with rules around productivity and delivery and all of that. So we can too easily say, well, everything needs to be different in future. Actually, I think not so much is going to be that different, except maybe for circumstances and the fact that you won't see all of your team all of the time at the office. But leadership is still leadership. It's still about being a strong leader. It's still about setting, in my case, seemingly unreachable goals, because I think that's when you unite people around a goal and when you really stretch people. And I don't think that has changed in any way, actually.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. So in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, listening to all these beautiful analogies you're making and saying that your organization has transformed itself to such a great extent. Congratulations on that. My question then as a grad star would be, how do I prepare myself for this future and this new normal in terms of what my skills for the workplace, etc. In anything any insights you'd like to share?
Okay, well, I mean, let's just say this, in terms of the roles everyone play. I mean, we spoke a little bit about technology. I can also speak to you about, technology and the use of it for hours and hours. Cannot ignore big data. Cannot ignore that. You mentioned the fourth industrial revolution kind of earlier. I think skill yourself for one of two things. You're either a frontline person and your I think job will never be at stake as long as you can be adaptable to be that value add link to an organization's clients who will always need that. Or skill yourself, if you have a different personality, to be the one that will build that technology, that will bring efficiency into businesses, that will do data analysis and, machine learning and AI and all of those words that you kind of young generation know a lot more, about than I do. But for me, that's almost one of two things. I think human beings will always be there. People will always want to do business with people. I don't doubt that. I mean, you can shop online, but you still want to speak to a person if something goes wrong. Or, a week or so ago, I bought makeup and I couldn't really on the screen see what kind of color base I needed. I wanted a human being to say, I think go one darker or one lighter. So, not being frivolous about it, but I think your skills is one of two. You are that kind of frontline client-facing person and you skill yourself up in that. Or you replace yourself and your own skills by, adopting and being the one that drive that technology that can actually almost kind of cover everything else behind the scenes.
Excellent, thank you. And then to end off all my questions, thank you for answering so truthfully, authentically, and honestly. If you could share any small nuggets with us, so we've spent an hour in conversation. If there was 2 or 3 things that you wanted us to take away from this conversation, that's wisdom or nuggets, something we could carry with us through our careers, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, so sure, it feels like I've said a lot. But maybe something I haven't touched on is just the way you present yourself in a professional capacity is more important than one thinks. Giovanni, I look at you, how you dress today. I mean, I can't help but, that to me inspire kind of confidence and professionalism. And I'm not saying that if you're an IT programmer and you work in the middle of the night that, it's not okay for you to be in sweatshirts or anything. But in my career, I've just learned that how you show up, and unfortunately, if it means how you dress, does play a role. People want to work with, especially I suppose in my line of work with I suppose the quote, dress for success certainly applies. Because often they never hear you, but they see you, and that's the lasting impression that you leave. So, that's one thing we've spoken about authenticity, a lot. But let me maybe try and summarize it in kind of 3 things. I think the first one is, and this is personal, be willing to take risks and put your hand up, even for opportunities that scare you. In fact, especially for opportunities that scare you. I have a personal belief that says the comfort place is that it's very comfortable, but no growth takes place there. So every time I've reached a plateau in my career where I felt, I'm not growing anymore, I'm not learning anymore, I'm doing the same thing, I now know the recipe, I've actually either put up my hand for a new opportunity or I've actually gone out in the market and, I suppose every time got lucky that sometimes when that happened, you get this call from a headhunter. So I think that thing, back yourself. If you don't back yourself, nobody else will. So don't be afraid to take risks, stretch your own boundaries. You need to make yourself visible. You need to ensure that you are on the radar when opportunities arise. People don't know about you, how would they? Secondly, have confidence and believe in yourself. The only way that you will be able to reach your goals and get where you want is to fully believe in yourself and in your own capabilities. I think this confidence will help you to put your hand up. Just spoken about that. It will help you to take on challenges, push yourself further and harder to ensure you succeed. If you don't believe in yourself, I think no one else will. And then maybe lastly, for me, what has worked is just to set my standards high. And if it's not high enough, then even higher. Have the right attitude, direct your energy into the right places. I think only by setting your sights high can you hope to reach your targets and then even exceed your own kind of expectations and your own capabilities. It does mean that, it's not a comfortable place because it means that you constantly challenge yourself. You always aim higher, you always work harder to reach those goals, but actually it's personal, you do it for yourself. I've never felt that I've worked for a company or a salary. I've always felt that I was doing it to grow and to do it for myself. I can share with you that, being the only woman in the environment often have led to some tricky situations, sometimes in the environment or a boardroom or a function. I can't even tell you how many times in my career I've been asked to pour the tea or do stuff like that. Then it's about your attitude. You could choose to kind of see that as the, greatest, worst thing that the world has done to you and spend all your energy on it. Or you can turn that energy into something positive to overcome it and, to then grow. And then lastly, this is just I think the best piece of advice that I will give to everyone today is life is too short to wear bad shoes.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. I am truly honored and humbled by the opportunity that I've received today to be able to be in conversation with you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Giovanni. You challenged me well, and it was fantastic. Thank you. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'll hand over back to my esteemed colleague, Laura, to then take over and handle the questions section. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you, Jeanette. The first thing I have to say is, Jeanette, I think you've won that auction. There is just no doubt. That chat, I began making notes, I began copying them. It's incredible. To everybody out there, I have been speaking to some lovely Momentum people in the background, and they will try and address the themes and what's come up in the chat throughout the conversation. But there's so much, we can't get to it now. However, I have noticed that some of the themes in the chat, this is just incredible. This conversation's been so organic that almost as the questions popped up, Jeanette answered them. I mean, what an intuitive session. Incredible. But I do have some that I would like to ask. I'm going to ask Jared's first, because Jared's chat I've been watching has turned into a huge conversation with about 15 people or more people involved. So I'd like to get your perspective on it, Jeanette. As a student leader, I've been exposed to multiple leadership development programs, and often they highlight skills, but they rarely provide new ones. Do you believe leadership is teachable skills, or should we rather be creating opportunities to allow leaders to rise rather than be inorganically created? There's quite a discussion going on there in the chat as well.
Unfortunately, because I was focusing on Giovanni's questions, I didn't follow that, so I have no idea. I'm kind of, walking into a kind of a black hole here in terms of my answer. But let me say this: until 2015, right? And I did tell you that, I've been in business for 30 years. I actually never had the opportunity to go on any kind of leadership development courses or anything. So let me just speak from my own perspective and my own heart. I mean, that's the best example I have here. I learned every single day as I went along by looking up at what others were doing and by really being hard on myself on the mistakes that I made. And I tried to just kind of, work through it and get better and better. Now, often when I see the leadership courses that we offer, for instance, our younger leaders, I'm a little bit jealous. And I think, geez, if I had the opportunity to learn those skills theoretically and not having to find my way through it by making mistakes, maybe I would have been a better leader sooner. So I think there's a place for both. But I think to think that you could teach it in isolation, it's a little bit like reading a self-help book and think, okay, now your whole life is going to change. I just don't believe in it. But I do believe that that combination is incredibly powerful. And let me also just say this, the power that I experienced when I was doing my MBA of that kind of leadership management development, that was actually how it helped me to understand myself and understand my triggers, understand my personality, and being able to be a lot more self-aware as a leader in terms of then what I bring to the table. So it's a bit of a, I think, maybe wishy-washy answer, but I think it definitely is a combination of two things. It's your own learnings. In fact, that's what I'll also say. I mean, having had the opportunity to do that executive MBA when I was, in my kind of early 40s, having had already kind of 20 years of experience behind me, I think was way more powerful because I've seen it all by then. I've done it all. I've made those mistakes. And it helped me a lot more to form as a leader than when you do it early on in your career and it's a lot more theory. And by the time you make those mistakes, you've forgotten what you've learned anyway.
Thank you, Jeanette. I think a lot of that just reinforces the whole theme of authenticity and playing to your strengths and being you. So Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the chat is also agrees with all of this. I want to just highlight a couple of the more feminine-based questions. I know it's a passion of yours. They came up earlier on. Anasha would like to ask, because you've been consistently about being strong and making decisions. And I think this relates to a big theme in the world at the moment. I mean, Brene Brown, vulnerability. She wants to know, can you allow yourself to be vulnerable in business, particularly as a female?
Well, I mean, I think it's part of being authentic. And I think the strength to make yourself vulnerable is actually the greatest strength there is. And I mean, I hope you've picked up a little bit of that today, that I was willing to make myself a little bit vulnerable by telling you the story of my mom, by telling you, the story of the mistakes that I've made. And I think that's what makes you human. So yes, there's all of that strength. But I mean, I think for me, it's always amazing that people have this kind of perception of me as a leader. And then when they get to know me personally, the first thing they will say is, wow, you have heart. You really do care. And I think that comes out because I am willing to make myself vulnerable. I'm willing to say, guys, I don't know how to do this, for instance. And I've never found that people put me down because of it. I've always only found that made me a bit more human, and it made people want to reach out and be their part of me. So I think vulnerability for males and females. And by the way, guys, I know it's harder for you guys to make yourselves vulnerable, but it's part of being authentic, because no human being is always at the top of their game. No human being is untouchable by the things that happen all around us. And I think that humanness really is what makes us better leaders and stronger.
Absolutely. Do you think, this is actually my question, do you think leadership has changed over the years to allow leaders to appear more vulnerable and to be more vulnerable?
Oh, I absolutely think so. I mean, there's a strong kind of movement now that is actually all about the more feminine traits of leadership. So, let me kind of just go into that for a second. I'm sure all of you have heard of the kind of, I mean, it's almost coined subconscious bias, that it's subconscious. So it's a bias that you have, but you don't even realize you have it. And it's often against strong female leaders. And just maybe like a second on it. It is because inherently we associate women with a specific role, the role of the caretaker, the role of the nurturer, the softer, that's how we think when we think about women. And we think about men, dads, we think about strong, conquer the world, lead, hard, all of that. Now, when you are a person like me, who actually mostly display more of those kind of male type things, I'm strong and I'm hard and I drive and I set impossible goals, you confuse people a lot, because in their subconscious, they then go, who is this person? In fact, I'm not going to tell you now because we don't have enough time, but just go Google the story of Heidi Roizen. It's actually Roizen, Roizten. In short, she was in Silicon Valley, she was a venture capitalist, and she was actually one of the most successful, a complete male-dominated world, and she made it. And then there was a case study at university where they told the Heidi Roizen story, but they split the class in two, and they put Howard's name on the one story, which is the same story of Heidi, and then the other part was called Heidi. And then they asked the class whether they would want to work with or for this person and how they rated them as a leader. Now, here's the bottom line. Everybody loved Howard, which was Heidi. Everybody hated Heidi and said she's too strong, she's too this, she's too hard, she's all of that. That's subconscious bias. Now, we need to know that to be able to overcome it. And back to your real question is that I think there are more space today for both male and female leadership traits. And even if I'm perceived to be this hard person, I am still a nurturer. I'm still softer. I still display, I think those traits of motherhood when you work with people. And more, the need is almost for men to change their way of leading, to bring more of these female traits into the workplace. And I think that is fantastic. It's very exciting. In fact, there's lots being written now about the most successful countries led through COVID was actually led by female leaders, because they say you know, we think differently. We think about our people first, not the economy first. And by thinking about your people first, you actually boost the economy more than the guy that didn't care for the people but just worried about the numbers. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's kind of more purpose driven in a way. And I think that's what's so fantastic, is that there's a place for female leadership traits today. So for a change, you know, men can learn from us in terms of how to lead.
That's amazing. You've actually touched on my own personal sweet spot, my own interest spot, which is the gender-based leadership traits and the efficacy and how that works. But this isn't my show. I have to ask other people's questions. It's very similar. You've covered most of this. Putella asked them, do you think femininity is viewed negatively in leadership positions? But if it's not, how can one use this as a leverage to be assertive without coming across as too aggressive?
So
question.
Femininity, yeah, I think it's just, it's a wonderful thing. So again, you know, I can only speak from my own experience. I realized early on that there was a huge benefit to being a woman. And the one thing I can tell you now is I've never tried to dress like men or be like them or look like them, because then there's just the sameness. Then I'm just like them. And honestly, what is the purpose in that? So I always play to being more feminine, you know, to just my appearance, firstly. But secondly, also in terms of how I would approach things. Because if we all approach the problems from exactly the same viewpoint, then, you know, where's the diversity in the room? Where's the kind of different way of thinking? And femininity for me played out in actually caring a little bit more about purpose. My male colleagues, I've always found, cared more about the numbers. I said, I'll care about the purpose. If everybody can unite around a purpose, then actually the numbers will take care of itself. My male colleagues felt far more, and that was maybe also an older type of leadership style. You drive for the numbers only, and people just kind of have to, you know, stumble along. Yeah. Now, having the courage to have an opposing view. And sometimes early on, people laughed at me. People said, oh, that's absolute nonsense. You know, that's a typical, like a thing that a woman would say. And I just didn't take offense, because I knew that there was something to this. And I knew I needed to just keep on voicing it. And, you know, maybe they not voice it emotionally, but voice it with examples. Voice it with, you know, so I prepared better. So that when I had these opposing views or different kind of opinions that I brought to the table, I knew I needed to somehow back it up, because they were not going to just believe it because I said it. But I mean, your question around femininity, I think it's a strength. I think it's a strength to be that kind of person that bring that diversity of thinking into the room. And I've used it always. And I mean, never use it. I mean, please, to all the girls here, you know, I did talk about how you dressed. It's hard enough for us to have a voice. Don't ever, how you dressed, you know, distract people from the voice you have. It's such an important thing. You know, it's such a basic thing, but it is so important. So don't overplay the fact that you're a woman. Just be a human being that's there and is as professional as everybody else. But bring that unique voice. Bring that gut. It does make a big difference.
Straight back to playing to your strengths and authenticity. It's what an amazing theme. But on, like, Hashika asks, have you, of course, everyone's made mistakes, but if you had one do-over in your entire career, is there one, and what would that be?
Oh,
don't mean in the chat, eh?
No, I've definitely, you know, made mistakes. I think being so hard on yourself and others, especially early on. I mean, you know, as an early leader, I think I wasn't suppose as rounded as I am today. I didn't have all the wisdom that I have today. I didn't have the kind of calmness to sit back and think about things and reflect a little before just diving head in first. And sometimes when I think about that, and I mean, today I'm privileged to now work again with some of the people that I led, you know, before I left kind of 18 years ago and before I returned. And when we reflect on that, they will say, I mean, you always had this raw energy, but, you know, a lot of it wasn't, I suppose, channeled, which means that we've often lost and wasted a bit of energy on taking or chasing things that probably didn't matter as much. Being hard on myself, I'm sometimes hard on myself to the extent that I think I do take away a bit of my own energy. You know, I have learned through the years to be hard and reflect, but don't let it drag you down so much that you kind of almost have to pick yourself up again after it. Be a bit more. So what I've do is I journal. I write it down. I feel the moment I write it down, it's kind of outside and I can look at it as if I'm reading a book and I can find a bit of distance from it. Sure, probably not the best answer, but let me stop there. I've made so many, but I think the thing is try and learn from them every day and try not make them again.
For sure. And again, you referred to being hard on yourself, which I think is another feminine trait that we bring to the table. And there's many examples that we are much harder on ourselves than perhaps men in similar situations are. I'm just going to give one quick mentorship question because there was a lot of mentorship questions going on about how do you find mentors and what's the best way. But Gwendoline asks, obviously mentors look for those that they see potential in. But what is that? What do they look for?
Well, actually, that's what I look at mentorship. I'm willing and available to people who have the will to better themselves, who look at me and think they can learn something from me, and who are willing to kind of take all of that and work on it. And then I'm happy. If someone, I have limited time. It's not as if I can mentor like 100 people, but at the moment, I mentor kind of 5 or 6 people specifically, and they're all at different stages of their careers. But for me, the most important when I look at someone is someone who does it not because they want to abuse the fact that I'm mentored by Jeanette Marais, the deputy CEO, blah, blah. But I think I can learn from Jeanette, and I'm willing to take, even when she gives me hard and tough feedback, and go and better myself. That yearning to learn and better yourself, for me, is all I want in someone. Because if someone has that, I know they will make it.
Amazing, amazing. So also find people who really want it. We're coming up to time now. It's about 5 minutes left. So I think I'm going to close this off. But you were the one who brought up, what's a beautiful quote you gave us, the rhyming quote, the children's books? Why have I forgotten his name?
Dr. Seuss.
Yes, I read it to my children all the time, but poof, there it goes. So I'd like to, Stephen, I would like to add another Dr. Seuss quote, and I think it's a wonderful way to wind up the interview. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. So Jeanette, on that note, I would like to thank you so much for your time. I know you're an amazingly busy lady. There's been so much inspiration going on in the chat, so you've made a difference today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the rest of the audience, I've got some key takeaways here that are pulled from the interview. Focus on lifelong learning. Being different is an opportunity. Trust yourself and be authentic. Bring your own magic to the table. Put up your hand. Having the courage to make a decision, but also the courage to correct that. Work to your skills. And finally, how you show up matters. What an amazing wealth of advice. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, everybody. I hope all of you out there enjoyed the event as much as I did. And we look forward to seeing you to our next event. Any students out there, do not miss the opportunity to attend Careers Week. We have prizes galore. We have money investment. Actually, Momentum have given us amazing prizes. They've given us an investment account, a small investment account that can start you on your career. We have interviews. We have interview examples. We have more mentorships. We have Huawei watch fits. We've got so many giveaways, and of course the learnings from the great employers. So register at careers-week.com now, and I look forward to seeing you there. There's also only 2 weeks left to enter the GradStar Awards. You do that by downloading the GradStar app, so enter there. There's also prizes involved there. If you're struggling with the GradStar app, please email us. Please email Nina@blackbark.co so we can help you. bear in mind it's a new technology and it's working for 90% of people, but without your input, we can't make it better. So come, please, email Nina at blackbox.coza and let us grow with your assistance. So Giovanni, that's it. We're on time. Giovanni, you're an incredible interviewer. Thank you for coming to the table and thank you for giving us your time. And once more, Jeanette, we are honoured to feature you. You've made a difference today. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.